In the race for the college football playoff, every win matters to the resume, and this is a resume booster for both Texas A&M and LSU down at Kyle Field on Saturday night. Who comes out on top and who betters their odds of making it to the 12-team postseason picture? Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we will see on Saturday night at Kyle Field as the number 14 Texas A&M Aggies play host to the number 8 LSU Tigers. Real quickly, make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below and the ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode of SEC Unfiltered, live shows, post-game reactions, Sunday Fun Day, Day Talk Ball, the Monday Morning Power Hour. Whatever is your fix, make sure you hit that ring notification and that subscribe button. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This preview is brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app and use the promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. And guys, this is not just made for college football games. If you want to check out a concert, go ahead and visit the GameTime app. Your favorite comedians in town, go ahead and visit the GameTime app. You want to go catch some nice hockey? You want to go catch some games in the NBA? You know where to look. It's the GameTime app. Promo code SECU, $20 off your first purchase. Dave, game will be played at Kyle Field, 6:30 kickoff on ABC, the primetime main event for the program in the Mickey Mouse Company. This is a game that has animosity, has rivalry, certainly has a lot of bad blood. A&M has won the last 2 times at home, but this also does have a little bit of that pre-nuanced college football feel for what you can expect in the postseason.
No, 100%. I mean, this game's had a my 2 years there at A&M. I was a part of one of the wild ones, the 2018 game at Kyle Field. That was A&M's first win over LSU since A&M had joined the league. Joe Burrow's last college loss, 7 overtime, changed the overtime rules. After that, you're right. This game recently, since then, A&M has not lost at home.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correction on that. 3-0 at home since 2018.
Yeah, so A&M has done a good job of protecting Kyle Field when LSU comes to town. You're right. Maybe this feels like A&M takes this rivalry a little more serious than LSU does, but nonetheless, the SEC tried to make it a rivalry. Again, it used to put it in the back end of the schedule, last game of the regular season. Now they kind of changed that up a little bit. But, I mean, this is big implications. This is a driver's seat SEC championship game. I mean, winner of this, when you look at the schedule down the stretch, I mean, obviously the winner of this, since both come in undefeated, somebody's leaving with no losses. So you win this game, you feel pretty good about getting your chances. I would be shocked if the winner of this is not in Atlanta playing for the SEC championship the more you start breaking down other teams' schedules.
They put themselves firmly in the driver's seat, sitting at either 4-0 or 5-0 in conference play, which is really, really good for a team like A&M. This is a win that now benefits you for not just the resume booster, but it also allows you to maybe drop a game to Texas and still be in the prime position to go to Atlanta, maybe get that rematch, maybe get the first round bye. There's a lot to like about this. Brand new program identity underneath Mike Elko, year 3 underneath Brian Kelly. Like it or not, he is living up to expectations at this point, saying, I want you to judge me in my 3rd year. We're judging you and you're a top 10 team right now. Let's go back and talk a little bit about what we saw last week for LSU. They're visiting in this. All-time, they lead the series 36-23-3. They have the longest winning streak right now. I think it's like 6 years. They won last year in Baton Rouge. Again, as we talked about, when they play in Baton Rouge, it does feel like this is a game that already feels guaranteed for the winner of a Heisman Trophy, for the Bayou Bengals. When they travel to College Station, everything can go topsy-turvy, and A&M actually defends the turf. They're coming off of what I would consider a very mature win last week against Arkansas. They found a way to get that running game going with Caden Durham. They didn't have an incredible performance from the stat line numbers for Garrett Nussmeier, but they still felt like they were moving the ball with ease. Defensively, another great showcase, another way to be able to force a couple of turnovers. My big question in this game, can you avoid the penalties? And more importantly, can you avoid the false starts? Because that was a major storyline, especially against Arkansas. And Kyle Field, at its peak, 103,000 screaming Aggies. And I promise you, they will be in full capacity on Saturday. Does that affect the snap count? Does that force you from being in a 1st and 10 to a 1st and 15, a 2nd and 6 to a 2nd and 11? That is something that really did bother me in that matchup in Fayetteville. This place is even going to be louder than Razorback Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, looking like they're trying to promote a blackout or something across the board there, trying to get this
They're
thing
going to a
going.
funeral, Dave. They're going to a funeral.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's something we don't talk about in previews, and I'm not saying just us, I think universally media doesn't talk about turnovers and penalties really in previews. We talk about these one-on-one matchups, but it's usually, I mean, you go getting double-digit penalties, you lose the turnover margin. I mean, look at Arkansas last week. Speaking of this game, you lose on both sides of the line of scrimmage, you lose the turnover battle, you lose the penalty battle. You're not going to beat anyone. It doesn't matter where the game is. You're right. And with the heavyweight battle between LSU's offensive line and Texas A&M's defensive line, that you could make definitely for A&M, this is the best offensive line A&M's faced. To be fair to LSU, they have played Ole Miss, which I think A&M's better than, but that's not a shot to Ole Miss. They're good too. South Carolina, another very disruptive defensive line. So LSU's been tested. They've seen some physical defensive lines. But you're right. If you're Cortez Hankton, and then you do not want to get in this, or Joe Sloan, you do not want to go get in negative situations. It's already going to be tough enough to go convert with, I think, Mike Elko and this defensive staff, specifically Mike Elko, is probably the second best, I would say right now as we speak, schemer, game planner defensively in the league behind Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann.
I think the other thing that's really important, 7 false starts in that game against Arkansas. That can't happen. You can't afford yourself to be able to now look at a situation where now you have to pass, where you can't open up the playbook the way you want, where you can't be manageable. The one thing I will say is that, again, this is a recipe for disaster at times for LSU. You feel confident in Caden Durham now being your lead back. Joshua Williams kind of mixing on in, 3-touchdown day at Fayetteville. But again, one thing that you brought up, and I'm glad that you did, Ole Miss's offensive line, Ole Miss's defensive line is great. A&M's could be elite. A&M's could be one of, if not the best in the SEC, right alongside Tennessee, right alongside South Carolina. They could surpass them. And they're finally feeling like that they're hitting their stride at the right time. And they kind of have been building up for this with Nick Scorton, with Shamar Turner, with Shamar Stewart. They're getting to that level. The pass pro of LSU has been phenomenal all year. They've allowed 2 sacks in conference play. That's it. And it came to, for my money, Kyle Kennard, who was one of the best transfers of the offseason. But Nick Scorton may be better than him. And so if you're Will Campbell, if you're Emory Jones, if they're allowing him to rotate on whichever side, he lines up on the left, he lines up on the right, this could be a recipe for disaster if you're Garrett Nussmeier. So that to me is one of the biggest battles I'm looking for. But here's the other part, Dave. You can't just signal in on number 11 to be the dude that you take out of the play. Because what happens is if you just go ahead and take Scorton out, well, now you're opening up opportunities for Turner. Now you're opening up opportunities for Cassius Howell. Now you're opening up opportunities for Shamar Stewart. Now you're opening up opportunities for multiple defensive linemen. Albert Regis potentially in this game as a bulldozing big defensive tackle. There are so many miscues to where the game planning for Joe Sloan and this offensive personnel has got to be to eliminate Nick Scorton's power, but you cannot play second fiddle or idly by with the rest of the defensive line that currently resides down in College Station.
Yeah, to your point about getting pressure on Garrett Nussmeier, I'm reading the stat right here. And again, I think just like total yards, just pure sacks is a little bit of an overrated stat because you go work anywhere in college football. They don't have if you go into a defensive team meeting room each week, they'll go get a big board made where these are their goals for that week that they need to achieve. Sacks is one of them, but also pressure rate affecting the quarterback. They all judge it in their own different way. It isn't just, hey, we got him on the ground, we sacked him. Just affecting the quarterback changes. But here's a good stat from a sack rate perspective for Garrett Nussmeier. It's actually really impressive. It's honestly a little unworldly from an avoiding sack standpoint. So he's leading the country in pressure to sack rate by far. He's been pressured on 64 of his 287 dropbacks so far in 2024 for 22.3%. He has only been sacked 1 time. So he does maneuver in the pocket well, but I think there's more to that. Again, I think Mike Elko, if you told him they only sacked Garrett Nussmeier 1 or 2 times on Saturday, but they were in their backfield a ton, affecting him, getting in his face, getting his timing off, it's making him throw both like short in front of receivers or behind or high. And as we know, tips and overthrows, any secondary coach would tell you, we got to have them. You got to get the interception, stuff like that. If you're doing that, he's going to trade that for sacks. But it is nonetheless impressive by that LSU offensive line and Garrett Nussmeier himself, who's not known for a big runner. But again, there's a difference, I think, between being a runner and a guy that has a good feel in the pocket to maneuver in. This is a guy that's played a lot of college football. Has been in, I should say, when I say play college football, Cole, hadn't played in a ton of games, but he's been in college football programs. He's gotten a lot of reps against quality competition over his time at LSU. So he knows how to maneuver the pocket. Dad's a coach, Doug Nussmeier. He understands this. I think that's an interesting stat to watch, though, because, again, no one's really touching him a lot, and he's avoiding sacks. So that's where A&M and them have to scheme that up this week.
What's really interesting is that Mississippi came in, Ole Miss came in. They had 0 sacks, but I think they had, 6 tackles for loss in this game. A&M can do the exact same thing. They rank top 30 in sacks with 17. I think they're 13th in the country right now, 16th in the country right now with 51 tackles for loss. So what's going to be really interesting as well is if the defensive front, headlined by Torian York, Scooby Williams, Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, can pressure Caden Durham and basically take him out to where you're living in second and long, where Joshua Williams to the outside, they're not being able to get that open crease. Then you're forced to pass. Do you feel like that your secondary at Texas A&M can go toe-to-toe with these wide receivers? Because if we can just call a spade, when you look at what we've seen so far this year for Texas A&M, they have not gone up against a wide receiver core like this for my money. Now, potentially you could say that there's an argument that depending on when you looked at them, Notre Dame has gotten a lot better. And because Notre Dame has gotten a lot better and they were able to shut them down, maybe that makes you feel like that it's because of what A&M was able to do. But you haven't faced off against a Kyron Lacey just yet. You haven't faced off against a CJ Daniels just yet. You haven't faced off against a guy that can line up in the slot or on the outside and run pristine, crisp routes like Aaron Anderson. And again, if you get back Chris Hinton at this point, which is an every single week question up in the air, that's the vertical threat that can take the top off of you. And then you throw in Xavier Thomas and Mason Taylor. So this is going to be a game where you thought that you did a good job taking away opportunities for Taylon Green. You're going to have to turn it up to Macho Man Randy Savage against a team like LSU.
Another kid to keep it on. I think Chris Hilton, they've kind of, I don't know, he's always banged up. I don't know if they expect him to play at all. Another kid to keep it on who had a good game, converted when I went back and watched, I think the 2-point conversion play for LSU. The Trades Green kid, a 6'7", 245 tight end, but he can line up in certain packages situations. I mean, 6'7", 245. You're just going to go big bully. I mean, we got basketball season coming up in 2 weeks. This guy will give you down in the front court, kind of show people how that's going to look. Hell, Matt McMahon may take Trades Green here, but I saw Brian Kelly talking yesterday. He's starting to get implemented more in the game plan. That's something to keep an eye on because we hadn't really seen him until this past week in a little bit against Ole Miss. I think he was targeted against Ole Miss. Let's
talk a little bit about Texas A&M's offense. Again, they get a 10-point win against Mississippi State on the road. Nobody's going to be complaining about that. Stark Vegas has been a nightmare, a house of horrors in a sense for what has been A&M over the last few years. It was a sound win. I want to take nothing away from that because it was a very crisp, direct win, and it kind of exercises the demons. They had 2 turnovers from Connor Weigman. Now, don't get me wrong. None were out of that place, but 217 passing yards in the day. They weren't able to run the ball as efficiently as you wanted in terms of yards after contact. Still found their way into the end zone 3 times. Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels combined for over 100 yards. They combined for roughly around 3.9 yards per play, 3 scores. Do you feel like that there needs to be a second punch against this LSU team? Because what's really interesting at this point is more and more we are watching as LSU's defense is not just playing with more continuity, but they're playing with more confidence. And that confidence, I think, is carrying over to them not making mental mistakes on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see Blake Baker be aggressive here. I don't know why he wouldn't be. Connor Weigman, again, I think you have to get him off the platform. You got to get him off his landmarks, get him uncomfortable throwing off his back foot. When Connor Weigman is at his worst, you can go back and watch the Mississippi State game last week. His 2 interceptions, tips and overthrows. It wasn't a tip, but it was overthrows. Those are interceptions you can't have. He does get a little inaccurate at times if you can get in his face and get him away from his landmarks and a platform. But if you let him sit in the pocket, he's going to get real comfortable. But again, I think that does start with stopping that A&M run game. Now, A&M could be down one of the more important defensive offensive linemen, Chase Basantis, out with an injury. I think he's kind of questionable. These injury reports should start coming out on Wednesday. So we'll see that. But that's something to monitor, to keep an eye on. But A&M, you could say it probably has some of the better offensive line depth of anyone in the league and country. I mean, they feel pretty good about their depth across the board from that standpoint. I mean, I know Marjay Reeds-Adams, a kid we signed at Tech when I was at Kansas, transferred to A&M now. He's been playing well. That offensive line is kind of gelled. So got to give a tip of cap from that standpoint of developing that offensive line for A&M in 24.
If you can pressure Connor Weigman and you can get into his face, it's going to create opportunities for you. And I'll be real. When you look at what LSU has, again, they are over exceeding expectations, because what was the main question that we had all offseason? What do we look at in this LSU front seven? Is it going to be good enough to withstand the success in the SEC? And so far they have. Braden Swinson has 7 sacks. Savion Jones is 4.5. Both have over 10 tackles for losses. Whit Weeks, who I've heard this term, and it's honestly one of the best terms ever. The Honky Badger has been literally living up to the expectations. And with that number 40, he has been a stud, a human highlight reel across the board. You also look at Major Burns, you look at Javier Suggs, you look at Gio Pace. Everyone seems to step up in the sack category and the tackles for losses. So if you can pressure Connor Weigman into throwing a little bit up tempo, if you can feel him having to maneuver outside the pocket, he will eventually cough up that football. But here's the other part. When you're not pressuring him, when the offensive line does hold and he has a clean pocket, we have seen the upside of him. And the upside may be coming out on Saturday. Again, this is a primetime event. He's already beaten LSU once before. Remember, back in 2022, last game of the year, 5-7 finish, A&M was not going to a bowl game, but they did figure out that Connor Weigman was the guy. That was the statement win that you want to see if you were Jimbo Fisher, if you were the personnel at the time. This is our QB1 moving forward. He's already showing you that he can win this game. I think that this is also a game where he kind of turns it up to like 15,000, because if he understands, if I get the win here, I'm taking my team deep into the month of November with a shot at going to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, we look back on if A&M wins this game, I feel really good about them being in Atlanta. And you could look back on and say Mike Elko's decision heading into that Missouri game to play Connor Weigman over Marcel Reed, who had not lost a game, who had not made a turnover or not committed a turnover, change the landscape of the league in 24. It totally. I mean, I don't think A&M's in this position if Marcel Reed. I don't think they would beat LSU with Marcel Reed, if I'm being honest. They may not even with Connor Weigman. I think it's going to be.
But they feel better with
Connor. He gives them the higher upside to go reach their ultimate goals and to play for a championship. I don't think Marcel Reed, and that's nothing against Marcel Reed. I think he's going to have. He'll be a good college player somewhere, maybe at A&M at some point. But I think to win a championship, which the ultimate goal is, he gives them the best shot when you pair it up with this defense. I think that's something to keep an eye on, that at the time, no one really thought it. I mean, he totally deeked Eli Drinkwitz. He made him kind of look like a fool. They didn't prepare for him all week. But no, I think that's an interesting decision there that could impact the whole league. We're looking back on it, hindsight 2020.
I want to be able to see one wide receiver kind of step up. Jabri Barber had a really good game against Mississippi State, 6 catches. Noah Thomas had 2 catches for 37 yards. But everyone else really just one big play. Trey Watson with a 26-yard gain. Ja'Day Walker with a 16-yard gain. Amari Daniels out of the backfield with a 14-yard gain. Cyrus Allen with a 12-yard gain. Can you get somebody to be that consistent playmaker? Maybe it is Jabri Barber. That was a guy that a lot of people were talking about when he joined the program from Troy this offseason, of being that explosive playmaker and maybe a good replacement for Aniyah Smith. If they can get that involved, and they can also maybe get the tight ends, Trey Watson, Thor for that matter, up in the playbook, get them kind of mixing in at the second level of the defense, creating the opportunities to where LSU is going to have to open field tackle, and that might not be good enough unless you're Will Weeks or Greg Penn. I think that's a good thing. And that's where I think A&M has got to play into their strengths. We're starting to see where Colin Klein really was able to get into his bag and figure out, hey, this is what really works with a guy like Connor Weigman. Let's continue to do that. So if they can keep him upright, they don't pressure him and kind of get the offensive line in his face, I think A&M can deliver. You and I always do previews. We always talk about one player to watch for in this game. I will go first with Texas A&M. I'm going to go with Jabri Barber. I think that he can be that explosive playmaker. Do you feel like that Zy Alexander can match him up one-on-one, take him out of the game to where where Connor Weigman's now going to have to target Noah Thomas, where he's going to have to target Trey Watson, where he's going to have to target maybe a Terry Bussey for that matter, whoever it is that comes on in for the play. But I feel like that Zy Alexander has kind of solidified himself as the new number 1 cornerback down in Baton Rouge. If you can take him out, then I think that LSU's defense has a shot for a field day. If you can't take him out, well, then what you're doing is you're allowing A&M to kind of open up its playbook, get in its bag of tricks, not mess around and kind of trust their ground game with Amari Daniels and Le'Veon Moss. You may not need to see him find a way into the end zone. What you're going to need to see for this game is Jabri Barber picking up first downs, resetting the chains, keeping momentum at an all-time high, keeping the clock moving, and certainly in favor of the Aggies.
Yeah, for me, for A&M, I'm going to go Nick Scorton. I think his ability to stay home, also keep contained on the edge, because LSU with Joe Sloan, Cortez Hankton, it fits Garrett Nussmeier perfectly. They like to run that RPO game. Scooby Williams will be key here too, but I think Nick Scorton in the run game, keeping the edge, I think that's who they're going to be keeping their eye on. If Nick Scorton can stay home, also have kind of a feel, make some plays too, he's going to have to guess right at times too. I think that will be a key for Texas A&M. If you can get them off track from an RPO standpoint, I think you have a good shot to kind of control this football game. If you're Mike Elko, who loves to bring the simulated pressures, if you can get LSU in third and long situations, I think that's where they pin their ears back, because, again, they're not worried about Nussmeier as the runner escaping the pocket. Maybe he does once get down. Maybe it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. You do miss. He picks it up. But, again, you're not going to lose sleep over that, because you're like, hey, we drew that up perfectly. We just got to make a tackle in the backfield. Nick Scorton will be key to limiting what LSU does from an RPO run-pass option standpoint on Saturday.
For LSU, for me, defensively, it's got to be Major Burns. He's back at the star position. The way that they schemed him up, I thought that it was a clinic of a performance by Blake Baker against Ole Miss. The way that they had the delayed blitzes, the way he was able to play in coverage, the way they kind of took out Caden Prieskorn in this game, I feel like that he is going to be kind of the glue that holds everything together for LSU, because when he is doing his job, it allows Greg Penn to do his job. It allows Will Weeks to do his job. It allows Zy Alexander to do his job. Jordan Gilbert over the top to do his job. So I feel like that Major Burns in this matchup, whether he's lined up with a big wide receiver, a tight end, they're sending him on delayed blitzes, they're doing packages with stunt moves to where he's being effective in the run game. I think he is the enforcer. I think in this game, this is the one where you want to see Major Burns act like a major on the field. He is the general of this defense, and he is the one that's delivering the crushing blow, and a big reason why LSU is coasting their way going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, for LSU, I'm gonna go Braden Swinton. I think they're gonna have to get some pressure on Connor Weigman, and some of it may be in the A gap at some point, but you can't blitz every time, or you're gonna ultimately get schemed up a little bit. All right, you want to keep bringing pressure like that, or dumps himself out into the flats. It's one-on-one situations. If your linebacker misses, he may go score. But I think overall, Blake Baker knows this. Kevin Peoples, the edge coach, is gonna have to know this as well. I think they know they're going to go win some of those one-on-one battles with Braden Gilbert across the board, whether that's against Demetrius Crownover, Trey Zune, who was a player of the week for A&M next week. Your one-on-one battles in a game like this, in an SEC heavyweight battle that's somewhat of a playoff game into Atlanta for an SEC championship berth. These games are won up front in the run game. Who creates the big plays? You have to win one-on-one matchups. I think Braden Swinton will be key here, him against the Aggies tackles.
Let's log in some predictions. Kickoff at 6:30 on ABC, Kyle Field. It's basically a pick'em game, 2.5 in favor of the Ags at home. Over under set at 53.5. Dave, I'll let you go first. Is A&M going to keep their undefeated streak in the SEC alive? Is LSU going to keep their undefeated streak in the SEC alive? Is this going to be a close call, or are one of these teams going to truly show they are the definition of consistent in the conference?
Well, like I said, going into this, this is an SEC championship ticket puncher. I think, again, you winner leaves undefeated, can afford a loss down the stretch. Schedule's very manageable. This game's at Kyle Field. Again, I wouldn't call Kyle Field a hostile environment, very loud environment, though. You don't have fans throwing stuff at you. I mean, maybe you're one-off fans. But for the most part, a hospitable group. It's going to be loud. A&M may come out in some kind of black uniforms. It looks like certain stores around there are selling blackout uniforms. So they're trying to get that trending. It's going to be a massive game, the biggest game in the league this day on the day. Again, like I just mentioned just moments ago, in these big-time matchups, even going back to when I was a kid in the late 90s through the early 2000s, these big-time SEC matchups are who runs the football better and makes the least amount of mistakes. I think this is where it comes in, both front sevens versus the offensive line. I trust overall more this A&M defensive line across the board. It's going to be a heavyweight battle, though. But the biggest test A&M has faced all year on the offensive line standpoint, at least in pass pro, because LSU, we mentioned, they don't give up sacks. Garrett Nussmeier doesn't take sacks. On the other side, though, I do think A&M, if schemed up right, you're right. You go back and watch Colin Klein. He's getting more comfortable. You see a lot of stuff he was running a little bit with my guy, what's his name? The running back at Deuce. It was at K-State. Deuce.
Deuce Vaughn.
Deuce Vaughn. Yep, knows that. Deuce Vaughn. You saw some stuff they used to run where they do some like pick screen stuff with the running backs. They scored on one of it. They scored on a play like that where the wide receiver goes and picks the linebacker. He's out there in the wide flats out there. You're starting to see more stuff like that they used to run with Deuce Vaughn in Kansas State and Manhattan when Colin Klein was there. I think he's starting to get into his bag a little bit, feeling comfortable. This game's at Kyle Field, at home, at night. I trust A&M's front seven more than I trust LSU's front seven right now to make the least amount of mistakes. Again, I think LSU's a very improved defense across the board. They're getting the boiling water is out of the – I mean, it's out of the what should I say, the bowl, whatever you want to call it, from a standpoint of overachieving this year from Blake Baker, Bo Davis, Kevin Peoples, like that. They've done a phenomenal job getting them ready. Again, I think you can make a comparison with weeks. We remember in 2021, Blake Baker was the linebackers coach at Orderons last year. Everybody was talking going into the year, Harold Perkins was going to be his next Damone Clark, who plays for the Dallas Cowboys now that he improved in 21. It's now with weeks. And again, I think this defense, people were joking about it, and myself too, was kind of laughing. Hey, this defense is better without Harold Perkins. I think that's real now. They're all more comfortable in their roles. They know what to do. I just think at home, A&M, I trust their front seven and their run game just a little bit more. Give me the Aggies, dude. I think give me the Aggies 34-30. I think A&M wins this close game and marches on and has a real good shot to go punch their ticket to Atlanta for the first time and go into play in the SEC championship since they joined the league in 2012. So 34-30 A&M in this game. I think it's going to be a fun game. I just like A&M's front seven. I trust the run game a little more than I trust LSU's.
So you have A&M winning and covering in Kyle Field. All right. Here's the deal. You all came for this moment here. You all did. I know you did because of it's me. And when I pick against the Aggies, they win. I am 0-4 this year when picking against the Aggies. I'm 1-2 when I pick the Aggies. I lost the Notre Dame game. I won last week. I think you knew I was going to win last week. I think we all kind of figured he picked us. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. I look at this front seven by LSU and the way that they have improved. I look at the way that this linebacking core and the way that they are funneling into gaps and they're not making mistakes. They're not making critical errors that are allowing open field explosive plays. I'm looking at this secondary and the way that even though they are allowing a few touchdowns, they also are creating turnovers. That's what I'm looking at to where I'm saying Blake Baker, Corey Weigman, Bo Davis, everything that we want to see from this organization, they were worth the price of admission, and they're probably worth the pay raise that they're going to get this offseason. They are. I could also say the exact same thing about Texas A&M and Mike Elko. The fact that you brought back the anchor of the good times underneath Jimbo Fisher to be now the savior and the solution and the problem solver that has been really a thorn in your side for the last 2.5 years after finally getting to that national relevancy with the Orange Bowl victory over North Carolina. This is the reason why you can believe in A&M. And I've said for a while, A&M is a program that can win national championships. They can win college football playoffs. They can be among the best in the sport because they have the resources and the facilities and the complex and the nutrition system and the workout complex and everything that you need at a program like Georgia, at a program like Texas, at a program like Florida, Ohio State, Oregon. They have it in College Station and they have the right people at the helm getting the best results out of those players. I get it. I also know that A&M has a quarterback that is better than advertised. He has been better than advertised. His performance last week against Mississippi State does not define who he is. And Garrett Nussmeier's performance against Arkansas does not define who he is. So I'm going to test out this theory. I'm going to. I personally believe that when you look at LSU right now, they are the more complete team. When you look at LSU right now, if they don't find a way to shoot themselves in the foot, they're the ones that should be sitting undefeated. And there is a very good scenario where if you open up the playbook in the fourth quarter against USC, they are undefeated going into this matchup. And it's a moot point about who needs this win more. I look at LSU and I believe that there is a lot to believe in as a team that can go deep into the postseason. I believe A&M is not out of the race just yet. I don't. They can lose this game. They could beat South Carolina, win against Texas, and they're right down in Atlanta. And we get a rematch of week 9 just down the road out in the Peach State. My gut tells me A&M is going to win this game. My gut tells me A&M is going to cover this game. My brain tells me it's going to be LSU coming out on top and pulling up the upset. I always listen to my brain over my gut. My brain is telling me that we're going to see the performance of a lifetime. from Garrett Nussmeier. This is one that's going to get him in the conversation for Heisman Trophy talk. I don't believe that you're going to give up a sack. I don't believe he's going to touch the turf once at Kyle Field. And 103 screaming Aggies are actually going to love that I'm picking LSU. I got the Tigers winning this game. I agree with you. 34-30 is the final matchup. I think that you're just going to see one more throw made by the gunslinger, by the gumbo gunslinger, more than you are going to see that one final throw made by Connor Weigman.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a split hair game. Again, this could probably come down to where this game's played at from a standpoint. No, I just think I'm just going to go. I think A&M at home. Trust the front seven a little more, and I trust LSU's front seven right now.
All right, so am I going to go 0 for 5 when picking against A&M, or is this finally going to be the win where everyone shuts up? Is Dave going to be right and Texas A&M wins outright and they advance in the race for the college football playoff? Let us know in the comment section down below your thoughts of this game. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Go Tigers, gig 'em. You know what? Just give us a damn good game. Peace.